Boxed chicken broth. Are you really buying flavor, or are you really just paying way too much money for something that is essentially water with a hint of chicken flavor? In this video, I'm going to scientifically analyze how much chicken flavor is in boxed broth compared to water, and I'm going to make the case for why you should buy this much cheaper and more flavorful product that will honestly change your life if you're not using it already. So let's test it. Hi, my name's Steve Gao, and I have questions. Namely, why are people still buying boxed chicken broth when there's way better products on the market, like Better Than Bouillon? Instead of coming ultra diluted in heavy boxes like chicken broth, or in dry cubes or powders like traditional flavor concentrates, Better Than Bouillon is sold as a thick gel-like paste in jars like this. The paste is made by cooking down meat, vegetables, and seasonings, just like you would a homemade stock, and then they concentrate it with salt and sugar. To use it, you simply add a teaspoon of paste to 1 cup of hot water until it dissolves into what is essentially chicken broth, or chicken stock, or chicken bouillon. Whatever you want to call it, it's freaking delicious. At first glance, Better Than Bouillon is way better value for money than boxed chicken broth. You get around 4 cups of chicken broth and a regular carton of boxed chicken broth. But a single jar of Better Than Bouillon, this is the large version that's 597 grams, can make a whopping 100 cups of broth. Now, when we factor in price, that works out to around 58 cents per cup of boxed broth, and just 15 cents per cup for Better Than Bouillon, which means that Better Than Bouillon is at least 4 times cheaper than boxed broth. And I bought this boxed chicken broth at Costco in bulk for around $2 per carton, but I've seen similar products at grocery stores go for $4 or even more, which makes Better Than Bouillon even more cost-effective depending on where you're buying your chicken broth. Oh, and did I mention that Better Than Bouillon tastes way better than regular chicken broth and lasts longer? Okay, I'm clearly a Better Than Bouillon fan, I'll admit that, but now I'll play devil's advocate. First argument in favor of boxed broth, I'm discounting the value of the water in boxed broth and assuming that it is worth nothing and you can just get it for free out of your tap, but maybe it is worth something. The same amount of bottled water at a convenience store might cost you $2 or more. So if you want to treat chicken broth like a nice, portable, refreshing chicken-flavored drink, then there is some extra value there for sure. It's portable, it's sterilized, it's more nutritious than water, but for most of you, that's not a great argument, right? We're not taking this stuff to the gym, we're buying it to make soup. So what we want in our chicken broth is flavor, not water. Second argument, potentially in favor of boxed broth. This isn't 99% water, maybe it's 97% water, and there's actually more true flavor solids per dollar in the boxed stuff than there is in Better Than Bouillon, which would mean that Better Than Bouillon isn't as great of a deal as we think it is. Third argument is that Better Than Bouillon has a lot of salt in it. It also has fillers like cornstarch, and believe it or not, it's concentrated, but it still has water in it. So after controlling for all those things, is Better Than Bouillon still a better deal than the boxed broth? So those are the arguments on both sides, but the only way to truly find out is to do an experiment. The experiment I'm doing in this video involves taking our liquid chicken broth and our Better Than Bouillon, dehydrating it thoroughly in the oven, and then weighing the remaining solids. Then we can compare that to the cost and see which one is better for the value. Now, my hypothesis for this experiment is that Better Than Bouillon is going to be at least 4 times better value for money, but I could be wrong. Let's find out. First things first, I'm scooping 9.6 grams of Better Than Bouillon paste into a container and dissolving it in 400 milliliters of water. This is the same concentration the label recommends, which is 6 grams or 1 teaspoon per 250 mils of water, or 1 cup. I've just adjusted it to 400 mils because it works better with my experimental setup. Now I'm measuring 400 mils of Costco's Kirkland brand low sodium broth and low sodium Campbell's broth into a container. I'm using low sodium so I can better control for the salt content, but there is a problem related to salt we need to fix before we continue. Like I said before, Better Than Bouillon has a ton of salt in it, even the reduced sodium versions. So I need to standardize all the salt concentrations so when I weigh the total dry solids, I can then subtract the salt so I know exactly how much true chicken flavor we're getting and how much of it is just salt. That begs the question, how do I know exactly how much salt is in Better Than Bouillon? Well, luckily the label tells us that it has 350 milligrams of sodium per 6 gram serving. Salt is made of sodium chloride. That's 1 sodium atom bound to 1 chlorine atom. Sodium weighs 22.990 grams per mole, and chlorine weighs 35.45 grams per mole. A mole is 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd of something. It's kind of like a nerdy way of saying a baker's dozen. And in this case, we're comparing the weight in grams of 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms of sodium versus the same number of chlorine atoms. So sodium is much lighter. It only makes up 39% of the weight of a salt molecule, while chlorine is 61% of the weight. We divide 58.45 2.44 grams per mole by 22.990 grams per mole sodium, and we get our conversion factor of 2.542. Multiply that by the sodium in 6 grams of Better Than Bouillon, and that equals 0.89 grams of NaCl, salt, per 6 grams of Better Than Bouillon. Same calculation to figure out the salt in the Kirkland and Campbell's broth, and we simply subtract those numbers from our 0.89 grams and add that into the broth to normalize everything. That was a lot of math. I need a drink. Actually, that's not bad. Next, I measured out 100 milliliter aliquots of all the stock solutions into pre-weighed jars in triplicate and placed them in my oven at 300 degrees Fahrenheit until all the water was completely evaporated. Then I weighed each container and subtracted the container weight to get the total dry solids per 100 mils of liquid. Better Than Bouillon was lowest at 1.35 grams per 100 mils. Kirkland was 1.51 grams, and Campbell's had the highest dry solids at 1.70 grams. Not looking great so far for Better Than Bouillon, and if we remove all of the salt content, it looks even worse. Removing all the salt, we get 1.00 grams of dry solids in the Better Than Bouillon, 1.15 grams in Kirkland, and 1.34 in the Campbell's. Very interesting. That means the Campbell's broth is better, right? Well, not really. I did a blind test, and I still found that the Better Than Bouillon was the best tasting broth, even when I normalized all of the broths to the same salt concentration. What's the reason for that? Well, it's probably because Better Than Bouillon has more umami-rich flavor compounds such as yeast extract and sugars. I don't really know the answer, I just know that it tastes better. I even ran all the samples through my spectrophotometer to see if it would provide any more useful information, but all it really told me was that Kirkland was the cloudiest solution, followed by Campbell's and then Better Than Bouillon, so the broth with the highest absorbance wasn't necessarily the one with the highest concentration of flavor solids. Okay, let's move on to the cost analysis because that's what we're all here for. Better Than Bouillon provided the best value per jar at 22 grams of flavor solids per dollar, Campbell's second best at 7 grams per dollar, and Kirkland was last place at 6 grams per dollar. So at first glance, Better Than Bouillon is 4.6 times better value than boxed broth, and that appears to support my original conclusion, but let's control for salt and cornstarch now. After removing all salt content, Better Than Bouillon is only around 2.75 times better value, and if we get really aggressive and remove all of the fillers like cornstarch, the value is still better, but only around 2 times better, much lower than my original hypothesis based on the label data alone. So is boxed chicken broth a ripoff? Well, not exactly. You're just paying for the added cost of shipping. Manufacturers aren't really getting rich off this. There's just way better deals out there, namely Better Than Bouillon. It provides better value. Now, maybe there's something to be said about boxed broth. It's more convenient because you don't have to mix it. Maybe you're on a low sodium diet. And also, we found in this experiment that Better Than Bouillon isn't as great a deal as I originally thought. Maybe it's only 2 times better value on average than the 4 times I originally hypothesized. But 2 times better value is still really good. And keep in mind, that goes up quite a bit if you're paying, let's say, $4 per box of chicken broth at the grocery store instead of the $2 per box I bought it for at Costco for buying it in bulk. Pair that with the fact that Better Than Bouillon lasts longer when it's opened. It has lower available water, so bacteria finds it difficult to grow in it. It's like how they found honey in the pharaoh's tomb and it was still perfectly preserved after thousands of years. You could probably put this in your cupboard and nothing would grow on it except for maybe mold on the top of the inside of the lid for thousands of years. And that's because there's low available water in here because of all of the dissolved sugar and salt. It also tastes better, and most importantly, you can increase the concentration to make your food and soups a lot more tasty, and that's very easy. All you do is you add 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons per cup instead of just 1. So if you want to save your money, get a better product that tastes better and lasts longer, get Better Than Bouillon and skip the boxed broth. If you have any ideas for future experiments you'd like to see on the channel, let me know in the comments section below, and until next time, keep experimenting and keep asking questions.